Hello and welcome to another video from me, Rough Swordsman Wargamer. It's an open the box and it's an unboxing of a brand new game from Vuca Simulations, and it is Operation Theseus, Gazala 1942, and part of the series of games, if you like, that Vuca Simulations have put out, starting with Crossing the Line, Aachen 1944, and Across the Bug River. So very pleased to receive this, and I must thank everyone at Vuca Simulations for sending me this review copy. Thank you very much. So what's all this about? After the Commonwealth offensive, Operation Crusader, the Axis overran Cyrenaica for a second time and prepared for the capture of Tobruk. If successful, the Axis might have the opportunity to drive to Egypt, perhaps crossing the River Nile and reaching Cairo. To prevent this, the British 8th Army established a defensive line consisting of immense minefields and fortified positions of some 43 miles, 70 kilometres in length. Operation Theseus, Gazala 1942, is an operational level simulation of the Gazala battles of 1942, which took place during May and June. The game is intended for 2 players, but is also suitable for solitaire and team play. The goal of the Axis player is to hit the Commonwealth forces hard and to seize specific victory locations, thereby opening the door to Egypt. The Commonwealth player wants to prevent this from happening, thereby eliminating the Axis potential for further offences. The game is played in a semi-interactive way and keeps both players involved at all times. Game contents: we've got 1 rulebook, 1 mounted map, 383 large counters, 4 double-sided player aids, 1 double-sided setup displays, 1 solitaire play track sheet, and 2 10-sided dice. Unit scale is infantry brigades / regiments and tank battalions / regiments. Timescale 1 to 6 days. Map scale 2.2 miles, that's 3.5 kilometres per hex. Scenarios 3, including the campaign. Playing time 60 minutes to 10 hours, depending on the scenario. And players 2 or solitaire play. Designer is Dirk Blennemann. Developer and art director Patrick Gebhardt. Graphic designer P. Bazurk. And rules editor Patrick Gebhardt. On the game meter, it's 7 out of 10 for complexity, but on the solitaire suitability, 8 out of 10. Here's some of the counters, and up the top there, a little peek at the map. So once again, the design of the cover is in keeping with the other 2 games in the series, which I think is quite effective. When you buy this game, don't be alarmed, there's no shrink wrap around it so we can open it straight away. So let's open the box. First thing we see are the rules. So let's have a look at those. The rulebook comes in at 33 pages, full colour, glossy paper. Now if you've got any of the other games in the series, these rules, I suspect, will look very familiar. I'm not sure if they've been tweaked. A, because it's a different campaign, and B, I think they've had some feedback on certain aspects of the game, which may have caused them to amend the rules. But I'll find that out when I start reading them. But for now, we've got table of contents. Here's the credits here. Some abbreviations. And the situation. So they've decided to use British English for this game. Quite right. So we've got introduction, summary of the game sequence, the components, a little bit about the map and the hexes and such. Combat units. How the counters are organised with all the numbers and bits and pieces. Headquarters, that's new, Axis air units. and the game markers, which once again most of those you'll be familiar with if you have any other games in this series. These are standalone, by the way. You don't have to have any of the other games, of course. And the combat results table ruler, which will show you, very handy that is. Sequence of play. So we have the admin phase, which if I remember doesn't occur during the first turn, then the ops phase and end of turn phase. Snafu and the Schlachtenglück. I've probably mispronounced that. That's like your 4-leaf clover. You can re-roll any one of the opponent's die rolls, which upsets them. Stacking limits, overstacking, displacement of HQs. So this all looks very familiar. Zones of control. Formations and independent units. Those are the ones with the white stripe, yeah, as it says there. Effectiveness checks, like morale checks. Supply status. Yeah, you have to trace back unbroken supply paths to make sure you're in supply. Command range path examples. Operations phase, where you use up your activation points. And the other side can react to certain things you do. And the actions you can take. Here they all are. Movement action. Breach minefield action. That's new, I think. And there's an example there, as it is new. Combat and a combat action sequence. Using these little chits, which are great because this will add tremendous replayability as well, because these chits will determine the attacker's combat strength as well as the defender's combat strength. And of course, as you're picking these randomly from a cup, every game will be different. How to calculate the preliminary combat ratio, and here is an example using the DRMs. I think that's new, the Schwerpunkt bonus. How to distribute the combat hits, retreating, refit, improved defences, the end of turn phase, and here's the admin phase. And then we're into the scenarios. So first one is Assault on Bir Hakim. Trying to see if that's a small scenario. Here we are. Several operation cycles, see special rules. Okay, there's no sequence of play to follow. Again, I think this is to teach you the mechanics of the game, which is always good. Scenario 2, the opening phase, that's 4 game turns. Scenario 3, the Gazala battles, that's 8 game turns. Combat sequence example, which is great. Designer notes, player notes, historical context, and an index. I just want to come back to the scenarios. There is a lot of dice rolling in this game, which some people, I know, find a bit tedious. I don't mind it. The combat is a little bit back and forth, but quite different. If you've not come across these games before, I've done playthroughs of both the other games in the series. The first one, Crossing the Line Aachen 44, was my first go at a hex encounter, so there's a few mistakes, but you can see the idea. I play it a bit better next time across the Boog River, so you can have a look at this combat system and the dice rolling, see if it's for you. But there we are. Them's the rules. We've got a couple of D10s, so that's always handy. And then we've got 4 counter sheets. They're a bit of an unusual size compared to what we used to, but I think you'll agree the counters are very handsome indeed. Here's counter sheet number 1. Here are some of the HQ units with the little flags and some of the air units as well. and combat units up here, all looking very nice. So the first number is the combat strength, and the one on the right is the movement allowance, red for motorized units and white for leg or foot units. The number in the middle for leg units is their anti-tank points, and for tanks or motorized units we have a yellow number, and that's their tank points. Here's the other side, and here with a little diagonal line, and the D means they are disrupted. Here's the second sheet, and here we can see the formation activation markers which we'll use on the map. Victory point markers, breached minefields, and these which keep track of the current combat strength of a unit. So on the other side, different numbers for the combat markers, and some differences on the back of some of those markers. We've got supply blocked on there and flown on the air unit. Here's counter sheet number 3, some more combat strength markers, improved defences, isolation markers, assigned. If I remember rightly, you can assign certain units from one formation to another formation to help out a situation, and one's for the Germans. And here's a couple of those combat multiplier chits that I spoke of earlier. Here's the other side. Here's the last counter sheet with those combat multiplier chits here. These are new. These are victory hex markers, and the combat results table ruler, as it's known. And here's the other side just to finish off. They're on sort of medium thick stock, and they do have that sort of linen finish which is quite posh. There's the counters. There are 2 copies of Player Aid A, and these are on card, really thick, so are going to last an eternity. But let's have a look at one. So this has got the combat results table on, the terrain effects chart, and this is where you can use your ruler, because down here is a graphical representation of the terrain which you can see on here, and when you move this along it helps you keep your place as you work out how many hits you've done to that nasty enemy. And here's the other side, and I must say, as the series goes on, they're tweaking things and improving, and this is another thing they've tweaked and, in my opinion, has improved it to make it easier for the player. This is the combat sequence, but the important bits they want to highlight, they've got a more detailed explanation over there. So for B, retreat before combat, that explains exactly what it is. Combat DRM determinations and what they mean is explained over there. And here is the armour superiority case chart, which I think confuses some people, but there is explained in a lovely flowchart. There's also 2 copies of Player Aid B, and this explains the sequence of play, how many action points you can get, what things cost to do, stacking limits, enemy minefield check if you happen to be moving into one, and breaching the minefields. And on the other side we've got what some of the markers mean, as well as effects that happen in the game, such as the Schwerpunkt marker, the breached minefield box effects, disruption effects, isolation, supply path, broken command or supply paths. I think that might be of supply paths. Maximum command ranges, outer command effects, command and supply, outer supply effects, and a little summary of what all the bits and pieces on the counters mean. There's also a scenario setup board, So on this side we can see the setup for Scenario 1 and the setup for the Axis forces for Scenarios 2 and 3. And on the other side, one for the Allied forces and markers for Scenario 2 and 3. And the hex numbers are there. So go through and put them on the map. And the last one is the Solitaire playboard. So if we're playing Solitaire, as you'll see when we have a look at the map, there are two of these, one for the Allies, one for the Axis. But if you're playing Solitaire, one's on the other side of the board, upside down. So this you place next to you, so you've got both sets of tracks the right way up and set up beside you. Good idea. And last but not least, the mounted map board. So let's have a look at that. Here's the map in nearly all its glory. I can't quite get the whole thing in, but as you can see, great looking map. And this is what I was talking about. Up here, upside down, you've got the Commonwealth forces, while down here, the Axis forces. So if you're playing face to face, that's fine. And along the side there are the sort of common tracks that everybody uses. So this is where the Solitaire board comes into its own, because you can put that next to you and have access up the right way to both sets of tracks. Right, as I'm wont to say, let's have a close-up. I've zoomed in at the top left corner of the map to show you, if you can see it, this sort of watermark feature the desert hexes have, because it can be pretty boring, and the hexes, as you can see, are sort of not complete hexes, and they tend to fade into the distance when you're playing, and when you look at them you notice them for movement and placement and that sort of thing. So a nice touch there. And just here we can see some of the minefields. So here we are at the top left corner. We can see some supply points here, and the Via Balbia, which goes on its way to Derna here and back all the way to Bardia. And here you can see minefields aplenty. And coming over to the top right of the map, here she is, there's Tobruk, surrounded by minefields. And up the top here we've got the Commonwealth forces tracks. And as I said earlier, some of the common tracks that both sides use, turn tracks, victory point tracks, that sort of thing. But what a nice looking map. And over at the bottom left of the map, we can see the Axis forces tracks and things. And here, just wanted to show you here, there's Bir Hakim, which is the location, incidentally, of MMP's Grand Tactical System game, No Question of Surrender. That's the map. So this has been an Open the Box, an unboxing of Vuca Simulations' brand new game, Operation Theseus, Gazala, 1942, designed by Dirk Blennemann, and the quality of the components, as always, top-notch. And once again, thanks very much to Patrick and all those at Vuca Simulation for sending me this review copy. Thank you very much. And I hope to get this one on the table as soon as I can. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did and you haven't done so already, it would be great if you would consider subscribing to the channel, because believe it or not, it really does help the channel. What also helps the channel immensely is pushing the like button of the video, the thumbs up. And if you want to be informed of other content the channel uploads, then push the bell. Leave a comment. I like this system. So I've played it since Vuca Simulations published Crossing the Line Aachen 1944. So I know I'll make mistakes, but I'm sort of quite familiar with the system and I like it. Yes, there can be a lot of dice throwing and the games can go on for quite a while, so bear that in mind. But what do you think? Let me know. I love to read them. Thank you, as always, to my subscribers. Thanks very much indeed. And just before I go, one last thing. If you wish to support the channel a little bit further, well, now you can. You can buy the channel a coffee. And those coffees go towards maintaining the channel and enabling it to continue to upload new content. If you wish to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description, and thank you. So, until next time, As always, you take care and goodbye.